Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Gary Townley and I'm part of the communications team here at Companies House. I'll be doing a bit of housekeeping in just a moment. So while we give people time to join, let me explain about this series of webinars. Now, this is the first of 4 bite-sized webinars on this occasion. They'll be occurring over the next few weeks, and we'll be joined by business experts to give you some first-hand advice in setting up and running a company. So let's have a quick look at what's coming up. So over the next few weeks, we have the Small Business Commissioner. We're going to follow that by ACAS and then HMRC. So make sure you sign up for them. And today we have Rory from Atom Content Marketing, and more about that in a moment. Now, Companies House, if you're not familiar with who we are, Companies House is the register for limited companies in the UK. We are an executive agency sponsored by BEIS, the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. We register and dissolve limited companies, we collect company data, and then we make that data available to the public, hence driving confidence in the UK economy. Now, most of our customers deal with us electronically. That's online, as it's quicker, cheaper, and leads to less rejections when filing your documents. Now, anybody can access the company register online from their PC, their laptop, or their smartphone, and that's all free of charge. So today, as I said, we'll be going to be joined by Rory Maguire, Chief Executive of Atom Content Marketing and founder of the Donut suite of business advice websites. Now, if you haven't heard of Donut, please look them up online. They are one of the UK's largest resource for small businesses, providing practical information to help businesses succeed. You can learn more about all the main topics that are vital in running a business, such as employment law, health and safety, and your main tasks and duties. Now, in addition to us, there is a small team of experts in the background waiting for your questions. So if you have any questions about today's webinar, this is your opportunity to get first-hand advice from the experts. Now, feel free to send your questions to us throughout the presentation, and I'll explain how to do that in just a moment. But please remember, we can only answer general questions, so we can't go into details on specific cases. So just make sure that your questions are of a general nature. Okay, so how do you ask these questions? So if you're new to GoToWebinar, I'll just take you through the look of the screen. Now, in front of you, you will see the presentation slides, and in the corner, you will see a small tool panel. Now, if you'd like to ask a question, you'll see on the tool panel that there is a question box. Now, to make this bigger, simply click on the icon that looks like an arrow coming out of the box. That's just on the right-hand side there. That detaches it from that tool panel, and then it gives you a larger area which you can type your question into, and you can leave that on your screen if you so wish. Once your question comes in, one of our experts will try to answer those questions for you. Now, if you're on a smartphone or a tablet, you can ask questions by using the question mark symbol on the screen. So let's get you used to that. So if you can send in a question now, just tell us where you are watching us from today. I'm based in Newport in South Wales, very sunny Newport at the moment, and I think it's sunny all over the UK at the moment, and my colleagues in Companies House are dotted over South Wales. So if you want to just tell us where you're listening from, that would be great, just to get you used to asking those questions. Right, I can see those coming in now. So we got Northampton, Nottingham, Glasgow, London. So yeah, so people from all over the UK. Now, before anyone asks, you will be getting a link to the copy of the presentation sent to you once we're done, and that usually goes out automatically in 24 hours time, so you can watch again the webinar in your own good time. So that's the introduction, that's the housekeeping. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Rory for today's presentation. So a very good morning to you, Rory. You're on mute, Rory.
Okay, sorry, I was muted by the organizer then. So thanks, Gary. Good morning, everyone. It's very, very sunny down here in Swanage in Dorset. I've got a few slides to take us through today, but I promise it won't be death by PowerPoint. But let's start. How about the first slide? Okay, so next slide. You, today's audience, are probably listening because you are thinking of setting up a limited company. In the next few minutes, I'm going to take you through a couple of examples. At the end of that, it should be a very easy decision for you whether to go ahead. And there are two issues. You know, firstly, do you want to become a limited company? But before that, when do you want to become a limited company? So it really, in my view, it's all about timing as much as whether you actually take that step. So once I've done those two examples, I'm going to whiz you through some free resources. I think you'll be very interested in the extraordinary breadth of help that's available for you, all free of charge. And then that should leave us a few minutes at the end for questions and answers. So let's start with the first example, which is my own company, Atom Content Marketing. Now, this is a business publishing company, and I started it because it's what I wanted to do. It's what I enjoy doing, but I had no background in it at all. I had no contacts. I had no first customer to get me started, to give me traction. So in year one, I did a lot of research. I wrote proposals for big organizations. I got very close to some very exciting orders, but I didn't get any. Year two, same again, but by then I was becoming known in the market. I did a little bit of business, but really I was still trying to find that market fit. Where could I operate, where I could really build a business? And that happened at the start of year three. At the start of year three, I knew I was onto something, and at that was my green light. Up until then, it really didn't matter. I was working from home. I kept my costs right down. And I must say, it was very easy to track sales because there weren't any. But if at the end of year two, I'd said, you know what, this is never going to work, I could have just walked away. I wouldn't have lost much money. I'd have lost a bit of time, but I wouldn't have wasted any time on that complete paraphernalia that goes with starting a business. So all I would advise you to do to start with is just focus on getting a viable business, you know, one that will generate regular monthly sales. So just to finish my own story, in year three, the government had set up a set of organizations called Training Enterprise Councils. They had an incredible budget for supporting businesses, 1.3 billion a year. And not a penny had been spent on creating the tools or strategies or anything really to help them do that. So my role was going to be to provide a very effective tool for them. It was a series of publications called Business Fact Sheets, and that worked very well. So I commissioned some research to prove that it worked. I did my first major trial with Kent Tech. It worked brilliantly. Small businesses loved it. And I got my first order, I remember, just before going away for Christmas, of £19,000. Now, as it happens, I came back from Christmas and the government had decided to abolish the Training Enterprise Councils, but that's another story. The point is, I waited until I had a business and then I created a limited company, because in my case, I wanted the credibility and I knew I was going to grow it. I knew I would want to bring in other shareholders and maybe some investment and etc., etc. So that's the first example. If we go on to the second example, cakes. Now, this is just something I use because we can all relate to it. But before I talk about cakes, I just want to mention Jo Malone. You may know she did very nice smelling potions and lotions, and she sold her company to Estee Lauder for millions and millions and millions of pounds. But on day one, she started in her own kitchen, and famously she had 4 jugs and 2 saucepans, and she made these things. She experimented, she found her best sellers, and then she thought about growing. Now, she was lucky because she was a beautician. She already had a set of customers. She did facials for them in London, so she had a ready market for her product, and it you know, when the time came, it took off very quickly. She got a shop. She went from very, very small batch production to big batch production, and so on. And I imagine at that point she formed a limited company and got all the advantages of having a limited company. So using the cake example, which we can all relate to, you start off at home in your kitchen. You're probably under the radar. It's done on a very personal basis. You're looking for your best sellers. You're looking for gaps in the market. So you're looking for those repeat sales. So in the case of the cakes, you might go to your local cafes and pubs and restaurants and hotels and market stalls, whatever, and you're looking for people who can give you repeat orders, because if you can get one cafe that might say take 10 a week, and let's say 50 weeks a year, give them a couple of weeks off for holiday, that's 500 cakes from one customer. Now, if you're a good supplier, there's no reason, if you all stay in business, why that can't go on for 10 years. That's 5,000 cakes from one customer. And that's a viable business. You get a few of those customers and you've suddenly got enough volume where you can confidently say, okay, I can go and fit out a commercial kitchen. I know I can pay for it. I'm going to hire 1 or 2 employees because I will have sick days. I need to do my bookkeeping. I need to go on holiday. And at that time, probably you'll want to register as a limited company, because for risk protection, if nothing else, if it all goes wrong, if your customers suddenly go out of business and that means you can't pay your bills, then the company can go bust, but you personally have survived. So that's whizzing through. That's a second example. And once again, the point I want to stress is there's no hurry to become a limited company. If you find that this whole cake thing is just an absolute nightmare, then you just walk away from it. And again, you haven't spent all that time with the whole, what I call paraphernalia of starting up, including, company registration. So that ends the sort of the first part of the presentation. We're doing okay for time. I just want to show you the donuts. So there are 5 of them. They're all interlinked. We keep it all up to date. These are linked to by the government and by the public sector, which is pretty unusual because they're very well established and people trust them. And because the government closed down their own website, businesslink.gov, years ago, a website which we were the publisher behind, by the way. So it's organized like a library. Your own website is probably built on a WordPress platform, which is brilliant, but it's a blogging platform. So basically, you pile the latest information on top, everything else sinks to the bottom, and people tend to read what you wrote most recently. This is like a library. It's done on something called Drupal. BBC uses it. The White House uses it. It's for people who want to structure and who work with a lot of content. So as you'll see from the slide, it's all highly organized. Now, I've circled a couple of things in the left-hand column, types of business. This is just, slightly showing off, but we've got over 180 types of business covered here. And we explain how to start up that type of business, some market research, to understand the market for that thing, all the key rules and regulations for that type of business, and lastly, the VAT treatment of that type of business. So it gives you an incredible head start. Absolutely, it's amazing. And moving across to the next column, I've just circled registering a sole trader and setting up a limited company. If if you're at the end of this, you're still wanting to know more, then all the information is there. Likewise, Companies House has absolutely amazing content, as you'd expect, on this particular topic. So, you know, look there too. So moving on, let's look at an actual piece of content. Now, in any section you look at, you'll find that there's an overview. I would really encourage you to look at the overview, because it just signposts all the most useful information, and it just shows you what is available. My own personal favorite is something called Essential Guides. This is a whole series that you'll find throughout the website, and that is basically a book in 4 pages. Now, in a world where we're just inundated with information, most of which is not very good, these are an absolute godsend. So at the end of reading this, you will know a heck of a lot about forming a business, and you will be ready to make fast decisions and then get on with your day. That's what we're trying to do here. And if you want to drill down into more detail, you can. So if we move on to the next slide, tax. When someone says to me, so should we do A or B, which is the most tax efficient, my heart absolutely sinks at the thought of A, either having to pay a fortune to an accountant who's probably going to say, well, you know, on the one hand, on the other hand, or B, me working it out myself. So these calculators are just brilliant. We've got masses of them all brought together in one place. And the first one, very conveniently for today's audience, is sole trader versus limited company. So you can put in what if scenarios. What if my revenue is 20,000 or 50,000 or 100,000? You know, how much tax will I pay? And if, as time goes on, you buy, you know, you have a company car, or you're doing payroll deductions, or you're trying to work out your income tax and national insurance, etc., etc., all of those calculators are here. So very, very useful. And as I say, if you start with the overview and then gradually drill down, you can find amazing information here. So let's move across to Lord Donut. Now, again, because of today's audience, if you did form a limited company and you want to issue some shares, so for example, when things are going well, I give shares to high-performing, long-serving employees, and I'm doing that at the moment. So I've literally gone into my own website and read these FAQs, and they're absolutely brilliant. I mean, 26 of them, all the things I wanted to know were there. And then as you drill down, if we go to the next slide, the thing that we're able to do, that Companies House and the public sector websites, you know, they can be as brilliant as they like, but they're not allowed to recommend any sort of commercial solutions, whereas we can. So, you know, we see part of our role as going out and finding the best solutions for our users, because, you know, if at the end of the day someone uses this share transfer toolkit and it costs 50 quid and it saved them a day, and it saved them huge professional advisor fees, they will love the donut. So that's what we're trying to do the whole time, is, you know, build a donut brand. So yeah, it's amazing. In 2022, it's extraordinary the amount of, the world is changing so quickly. Back in the day, you know, if you were doing anything with your shares, you would be talking to a solicitor and being charged by the hour, and, you know, before you know it, it's a massive bill. These days, you can do things on a DIY basis with toolkits like this, where you just go boom, 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 boom. These are the 10 things to do. Here's the template, here's the document, here's the thing you send to Companies House, and then get on with the rest of your day. It's absolutely phenomenal. So I hope that was useful. Before we go on to the questions, it's now 10:02. Before we go on to the questions, just to sort of summarize, limited companies are absolutely brilliant, because they do give you the control of risk. You're still at risk. If you're a director, you can be sued personally. If you're borrowing from a bank, you probably are going to have a personal guarantee if the bank's at all worried about getting their money back. So, you know, there still is risk, but it gives you a lot more protection than if you were a sole trader and were basically running your whole business on a personal basis. But the thing I love about the limited company is it just gives me the, you know, it gives me the flexibility to build a business that I can maybe sell one day. You can involve your employees. You can, you know, you have directors with responsibilities. The whole thing is, in terms of building a team, it's absolutely brilliant, as opposed to a sole trader just saying, yeah, you come and work for me, and you know, here's a salary, and that's that. So you know, I'm recommending it clearly, very strongly, but there's no hurry whatsoever to go to that stage. So the first stage is work out whether your business is viable, and that might not be as easy as you think. And although it is brilliant fun, if it isn't working that well, it can be a bit of a nightmare, and you might go, do you know what, I'm not going to carry on with this. So, you know, that's why it's good to keep it simple in the early days. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. We've got just under 10 minutes for any questions. Gary, you've got me some nice easy ones, I hope.
Right. Well, there's not many questions coming in, so come on, guys. I'm sure there's something you want to ask Rory about starting your own business. So keep those coming in, and we'll get answers to those. But we have had a few beforehand anyway. So let me have a look at a few we had before we started today. I think the first one, which is probably one that I would want to know as well, Rory, is how can you afford to have no sales for 2 years? That's quite a remarkable
How did I have
business.
no sales?
Yes, yeah.
Well, I could say because I was completely incompetent, but I think maybe the question is how did I survive having no sales? And the answer is, you know, I'd always planned to start a business, and I'd always been very good at saving money. So I worked in finance, so I was in venture capital, which is, you know, well paid. And then I was an analyst on the Tokyo stock market, which was ridiculously well paid, and I could save lots of money. The other thing I'd say, as an aside, because I lived in Japan for 4 years, they're very different to us. They're a lot more patient in business. So over there, spending 2 years getting ready, it would be quite normal, I think. Whereas over here, we're always in this sort of mad rush. Everything has to happen today. You know, I see people working in big organizations, going from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, rushing. You can actually sit back and plan things and take your time. So I hope that answers the question, Gary.
Brilliant, thanks, Rory. Right, I think you sort of covered this a little bit, and then I think you've got a tool on the donut websites, because the thing that a lot of people worry about when deciding which type of structure to start is the tax element, and whether becoming a sole trader or a limited company. I think you alluded to it a bit. Can you shed a bit more light on what the main implications are?
Yeah, I think when I asked this question a very long time ago, and I think I went along to my accountant, and he told me everything that I could have read and had read. And then I seem to remember he sort of said, so it depends on your situation. I mean, that's a classic professional advisor. But when pinned down, I think the gist of it is something like this. When you're very small, being a sole trader, you pay less tax. It's certainly what, you know, I'm not up to the minute on this, but that used to be the case. As you get bigger, being a limited company, you pay less tax because of dividends, because there's no national insurance on dividends. And in any case, a limited company just gives you a lot more flexibility about when you make profit, when you pay, you know, when you capitalize things, etc., etc. There's a load of things you can do to, you know, pay more or less tax in particular years. So that would be my answer. When you're small, sole trader; when you're larger, limited company. But seek professional advice.
Thanks, Rory. Yeah, and as I think, again, if you alluded to it, but yes, you can go from a sole trader to a limited company. That's a fairly easy sort of progression to make. Okay, let's have a look at another one here. And I think this is true for most business startups, really. Organizations like to buy from from big suppliers, should we say, with a track record. So how can you make your first sale when you haven't got that sort of track record behind you?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's a very good question. I think even, if let's say let's say you're Joe Malone. She will have, even without her customer base, she would have just had that personality that says, I'm great, I'm doing this thing, help me, buy from me. That's slightly how I started. To start with, you are your brand, and it's extraordinary how people will help you if you ask them to help you. I'm trying out this thing. People have, anyone who started a business feels sort of sorry and supportive for other businesses. When I was doing it, I had a very unfair advantage in as much as I used to work for a company called 3i that was very well known. And I could just say, look, I'm X3i and I'd like to have a meeting about this. I think I can solve that problem for you. And just the fact that I was X3i gave me a lot of credibility, and people thought, well, he wouldn't, this guy's not going to waste my time. And I had no difficulty at all in getting meetings during my first 2 years. Yeah, I mean, surprisingly so. But I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's great, Rory. I think this is a difficult one, and I think if we knew this, we wouldn't be in this job as we are, I think. But there we are. Can you tell us what makes a business succeed or fail?
Well, I think I can actually. So this was my job at 3i in venture capital. The job was to look at hundreds of business plans, and very quickly, it's hard to work out, what's going to be the next Google, what's going to be the next winner. When Rightmove came along, it was probably one of 100. Now, picking which one of those 100 was going to win that competition and become, the property portal, would be very difficult. But what you could very quickly do was spot the losers. You could see the ones that weren't going to go anywhere, and the sort of, the things that you would see a lot is people who were just massively unrealistic about how difficult it is to get traction with a startup. To start with, people, your product probably won't be right. Your fifth iteration might be right. So to start with, you're probably not quite what they want. And if you're selling to another business, they don't want to deal with a startup. So too many startups waste their time and don't have things that work and even go bust. If you're selling to the public sector, that's all about avoiding risk. So in the public sector, before you even talk to them, you need to be absolutely ready for it. So I'm thinking in particular of one company that went bust selling to the public sector, and they were just naive in terms of, oh, we've got a great product, they'll buy it. So the message is keep your costs absolutely down until you've got the revenue to cover them. So revenue first, cost second. The guys that go bust, sometimes unavoidably, have gone in with big costs, and then they just run out of money before they've got decent monthly sales. So I've got 1 minute to go, I think, on my clock.
Time for just one more, I think.
Yeah.
And I think it's quite a common one. Do banks favour limited companies over sole traders?
I don't know, but I imagine I don't imagine it makes a lot of difference. A bank is worried. Have you got the cash flow? Can you repay the loan or the overdraft or whatever it is? And that's really more to do with your business than the type of business. And if you're a sole trader, obviously you're liable to pay it back anyway. And if, as I said earlier, if you're a limited company, they'll probably ask you for a personal guarantee anyway if they're worried. So I'm not sure it makes a lot of difference, but a bank might say otherwise.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thanks, Rory. Right, I think we've answered most of the questions coming in. Now, please remember to sign up for our email updates, and you can do that by ticking the register box at the end of the presentation. So thank you very much for joining us. We're just about on time now. Whoops, let me just go back. If you haven't got to your question, and I think there might be a couple in there we haven't got to, we'll get back to you in the next couple of days or so. Now, please remember, we will send you a link to the recording of the webinar in the next day or so, and that goes out automatically in 24 hours. So if you don't receive that, and you want the slides or a link to that, then just drop us a mail at webinars@companieshouse.gov.uk. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to my colleagues who are fielding the questions. And of course, thank you to Rory for taking time today to share his knowledge.
Thank you, everyone.
Please sign up to join us for the next webinar. That'll be presented by the Small Business Commissioner, and I think that's in about 2 weeks' time. And don't forget, we also have ACAS and HMRC to follow. So thank you very much for joining us. Goodbye, and we'll see you at the next one.